Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
It wouldn't be the holiday season if there wasn't candy, right? Celebrate the holiday season with the Holiday Crush. They've sprinkled candy with a holiday theme and fun-packed challenges every week for 5 whole weeks, finishing on January 4th. The more challenges you complete, the better your chances of unwrapping delicious rewards. So, are you ready to crush the holidays? Play the Holiday Crush now. Download it from the App Store, Google Play, or Windows Store for free. Terms and conditions apply.
Ich warte seit Wochen auf diesen Tag und tanz vor Freude über den Asphalt. Als wär's ein Rhythmus, als gäb's ein Lied, das mich immer weiter durch die Straßen zieht. Komm dir entgegen.
Hello and welcome to Gegenpressing, the German football podcast from the Football Grad Network. I'm your host, Bryce Dunn. And as always, we will start the show by going over this weekend's results. So, the Friday night game. Yes, Gladbach had started the season very well, but it didn't continue on this occasion. Freiburg managing to beat them 3-1 with an impressive second half. On Saturday, we go into Mainz versus Bayern. Bayern failed to look impressive again, but did come out on top 2-1. Wolfsburg got a 3-0 victory over Fortuna. Then we've seen Dortmund, a game that we'll certainly be talking about plenty, as Chris Williams was there, drew 2-2 with Hertha Berlin. Hanover 1, Augsburg 2. Then we've seen Hoffenheim in the late kickoff game take on 10 men of Stuttgart, coming out on top of 4-0. On Sunday, we move into Nuremberg, drew 1-1 with Eintracht, who had been soaring ever so high. What a great result for Nuremberg this turned out to be. RB Leipzig got only their second ever Bundesliga 0-0 against Schalke, a team that Dietmar Hamann has slated for being rather dull, as you may have heard over the last few days. The final game of the weekend, well, almost saved the best to last with 8 goals. That's right, Werder Bremen 2, Bayer Leverkusen 6. That's right, last week we got an impressive 32 goals, which we were very happy about. This week we only got 31. What a shame. But anyway, joining me as always is, as I already mentioned, Chris Williams. Chris, how was your weekend?
It was fantastic, thank you, Bryce. I was in the beautiful city of Dortmund, industrial heartland of that area, and yeah, it was very nice. I had a great time catching up with friends, and obviously also working Saturday at Dortmund, which is a fantastic place to work. Real cutting edge media facilities, few Premier League sides. Could learn a thing or two from what they've got laid out. Wi-Fi was a bit iffy though, but apart from that, fantastic weekend, Bryce.
Very good, and I can only imagine you got an extra hour's sleep with the clocks going back.
No, because the clocks went back. I didn't know if they went back in Germany or not. Had a chat with Manu, who's German and didn't really know himself, so that didn't help me because he's living in Canada. So why does he need to know if the clocks go back in Germany or not? So I had to stay up till 3 o'clock in the morning, Bryce, just to make sure that they went back properly on my phone, and I didn't miss my flight, which was at 10.
I obviously know this story already, but just enjoyed it so much I thought everyone else needed to hear. Sorry, Chris. Anyway, Manu, yes, you're with us as well. What do you mean you didn't know if the clocks were going back or not?
In fairness, I did send Chris a screenshot from Google Germany where it says the clocks would go back.
Okay.
Yeah, I was happy with that bit. I just didn't trust my phone to make its way back because I couldn't remember if it had automatically gone on to time or if I'd just thrown an hour on.
Yeah, that would freak me out too. That automatic thing that it just happens. It's like, is this the new time or the old time?
Yeah, normally it wouldn't bother me, but there was only one flight out of Dortmund that Sunday and I didn't want to have to pay for a night in a hotel and another flight home on Monday.
Wow, that's a good point, Chris. And we're glad to hear that you're back anyway. But yeah, guys, let's get off the clocks going back and let's talk about the football, I think. And I suppose it's only right to start with the Friday night game. As we've seen Freiburg, as I mentioned, win 3-1 against Gladbach after 2 early penalties. Freiburg have an impressive second half and coming out on top, leaving them 11th in the table. Chris, I mean, it was maybe a little bit unexpected, this result. I mean, Borussia Mönchengladbach have had such a great start to the season. Most probably would have called it, even though they're away from home, that they would probably pick Freiburg off.
Yeah, I certainly thought they would have done. Really shocked to see the result in the end. Obviously, it was made a little more comprehensive in the dying seconds, wasn't it? So it's a great shot in the end that takes it to 3-1. And obviously, Gladbach were trying to press for a very late equaliser, and they got stung on the break. Which I think if you're going to do that, if you're going to try and get a late goal, you want your goalkeeper to push up. So it's just unfortunate. I'm sure Gladbach fans will be happy that they at least try and find a goal. But at Freiburg, the way Freiburg have been playing, they've been out of sorts as such, and they have been quite good at home. But I still couldn't see this coming. To be honest, I thought it'd be a decent win for Gladbach, but unfortunately for them, they dropped points again, and they should be a lot higher now, or they should be a lot more on Dortmund's tail than they are. And I'm hoping it's not going to be a sign of things to come, because we saw Wolfsburg get off to a great start and they've sort of flopped a bit. I wouldn't like to see Gladbach do that, because I think we need 4 or 5 teams all going for the title at some point. But I think the main response to how will they get back from this, when their league comes back on the weekend, how is their response to this? I think we can judge Gladbach by that. But for Freiburg, fantastic result.
Yeah, absolutely. Manu, I mean, we talked about how Freiburg may struggle this season. They seem to be doing a decent enough job once again of not just hanging in there in the Bundesliga, but becoming a well-established mid-table side.
Yeah, I mean, Freiburg, Christian Streich, he always does a fantastic job there, and I think when you look at the player recruitment in particular, they always seem to find players that can help them. Heinz, for example, they signed from Köln, who went down right at the end of last season, and a lot of people thought that Dominik Heinz would go somewhere else, and Streich was able to convince him, tell him, look, if you join us here in Freiburg, I can help you develop your game and become a better player, and then you can still make the next step. And he did something very similar with Luca Waldschmidt, who he signed from Hamburg. Hamburg, of course, also went down, and he's been a really interesting player who hasn't really shown his full potential at HSV at times last season, and he was excellent in this game. And I think Freiburg just have that ability, because they have to work well as a club. Every signing that they make has to work out right, because they don't have the financial acumen that a lot of other clubs have in this competition. So for them, every transfer has to be bang on, and thanks to Streich, they managed to do that they managed to sign the right players and bring in the right players. And on top of that, and I think this is maybe the one thing that I find even more impressive, is that they managed to play very good football. The game against Gladbach was a fantastic example of that. It's not like that they just stood with 11 players behind the ball and tried to park the bus. No, they actually tried to play some very good football. And maybe to top that off, the starting 11 was only German players. That's something you don't see very often anymore in the Bundesliga.
No, not at all. It's rare you see that in any of the top flights in Europe, if being honest. So, yeah, that's very interesting, and I suppose good thing for German players. Chris, I mean, if we look at Freiburg, I mentioned that they're sitting in 11th. They've established themselves over the last few years in the Bundesliga. I mean, is there anything that they can expect from this season? As in, can they finish maybe in Europa League spots, or have they not quite got the side for that? And I suppose then the question is, when should their fans maybe expect to maybe take a step further?
Well, it's a hard one, that, Bryce, because they made their Europa League last season, albeit just a preliminary round, and they dropped out of it rather quickly. As we've spoken on numerous occasions on this podcast, they are a very small traditional football club, very small traditional ground. They've got a very small budget. They don't go out and sign ridiculously expensive players. I think for them, a European adventure is a bit too much for them. And I think if they were to get straight into let's just say for some strange reason they finish sixth and they go straight into or fifth even, they're straight into the Europa League group stages next season, then I think that would be a real problem for them. We're already seeing the likes of Schalke and Leverkusen to some extent find it hard to adapt to that battle rhythm. Leipzig have found it hard at times, playing Thursday, playing Sunday. I think it would be a step too far for Freiburg. And I think if they got European qualification, you could probably see them hovering round about the relegation playoff place, or even worse for them, below it. I think that Bundesliga survival is what it's about. If they wanted to target anything, I think they could target a good run in the Pokal, maybe get to the semi-final, quarters, maybe, or if they can play the right sort of football, to the final and a day out in Berlin. But I think for them being in the league is, I'm not going to say good enough, but that's where I'm heading towards. Is good enough for them to be in the Premier Division in Germany, the very top tier. That's where they want to be. And Manuel's quite right. They did play football, and they always do play football when they can. There are times when they need to put men behind the ball, but this certainly wasn't one of them. And they pushed and pressured Gladbach into making mistakes. They pressure Gladbach into making tactical errors on the field. Matt went to this game and he picked out in his reports that Stindl was forced to drop deep. Well, you make Stindl drop really deep, all of a sudden he's very ineffective. And that's pretty much what Freiburg did. He just neutralised Gladbach's game plan and then hit them with their own. And if you look back over that game, there's a number of Gladbach individuals who had a pretty bad game. Now, I think if you have one player that has a bad game, that's fine. They had a bad game. If you get 3 or 4 players that had a bad game, I think that more points to the strength of the opposition and how they nullified their effects, rather than just saying, actually, Gladbach had a really bad game. Well, maybe Freiburg had a say in that, and I think on this day they did. I think tactically, Strike got it bang on. But the thing that not concerns me about Freiburg, because I think they're going to be mid-table, is their ability to build on this good win now on the next 3 to 4 games, how they're going to serve after that. But getting back to the original question, I think if they finish the end of the season exactly where they are now, which is 11th, that's a fantastic result for them.
I suppose we're going to talk about Bayern next and move into the Saturday games. But Manu, we talked about how Freiburg are doing, sitting in 11th. And as Chris said, that's an achievement in itself if they can finish the season there. But Freiburg actually have Bayern Munich coming up next, an away day for them. I mean, do you see them having the possibility of picking up a point or even more in that fixture?
Oh, that's a very good question, Bryce. I think
it's going to lead us on well to our next topic. I think,
it does. And it's a very good question because I had the great pleasure to cover the last 2 Bayern games while Chris got to focus on Dortmund. And it's been not always an easy watch for watching Bayern these days. When we talked last year or the first year we did this podcast about how it's actually a pleasure to watch Bayern and to see all these great players working together and producing results that we are not getting from Bayern this year. I mean, you look at the AEK game, you look again at the game at Wolfsburg, and Mainz, all 3 times, they won all 3 of those games, but all 3 times they seemed very beatable. And the Mainz game, that would have been a game that when we started doing this podcast, they would have won 5-6-0. Same with Wolfsburg. I mean, how many times have Wolfsburg just rolled over and lost to Bayern? And AEK Athens, there's a few occasions where AEK Athens could have taken the lead. And I think the one common thing in this thought thread is that these teams attempted to play football. And I think clubs are no longer scared to do that against Bayern. And Christian Streich is someone with a positive game plan. And if he approaches the game the same way that he approached this Gladbach game, because Gladbach are a very good side. They were ahead in the standings going into this game. They played some fantastic attacking football, and Chris is quite right, with 3 or 4 players that worked fantastically just a week ago, all of a sudden drop off in form in one game. That means they were taken out of the action. And I think with that in mind, I think every club in the Bundesliga right now, and this is a phenomenon that we've discussed from even Bruno Labbadia two weeks ago now, said we're going to play against Bayern and we're going to try to win. And I think that's a mindset that has changed. Now, I'm not saying that Christian Streich is going out and said we're going to beat Bayern, but I think he's certainly saying in the dressing room, like, look, if we play our match, if we challenge them everywhere on the pitch, if we play it tight, if we are efficient when we're going forward, we can get a result in Munich. And I think that is sort of the attitude that you see throughout the league. So to answer your question, I think Freiburg have the potential to get something in Munich.
Yeah, well, I mean, if we go to you, Chris, would you say that a result like this, yes, they may not have been as impressive, and we've talked about, say, AEK Athens, and Mainz having their chances, and, Bayern maybe not beating Mainz, convincingly, it's still a victory. And do you think this goes some way to getting them back on track, or do you think they need to be doing a bit more than just a 2-1 victory over Mainz?
I think this particular result was win at all costs, be that ugly or be that beautiful. And they didn't play particularly well, and they still won. Now, counter that with 2 to 3 weeks ago, where they played particularly poorly against Augsburg and drew. So there's an improvement there. An extra 2 points gained. Results went for them across the rest of the league. So that just about winning at Mainz all of a sudden means a lot more in the team of where they are in the table, how far they are behind the leaders, etc. So it might not be the way they want to play football currently, but unfortunately for them, it's the way that it is. And if you're playing poorly and picking up results, that is an advantage, because at some point you would think that this Bayern side will sort themselves out and get back to playing the sort of football that we know they can, and picking up wins. I think it's very important if you're in a bit of a trough and you're not playing particularly well, that you still need to be able to grind out points. And they've done that today. Today. They did that on Saturday. Today's Monday. They did that on Saturday. And it's going to be interesting to see how they move on from that now, because there's a pretty big game just on the horizon. So wait and see on that one. But I'm with Manu. They're not an interesting watch. I just about watched the highlights of the game midweek. Was it midweek against AEK? In fact, no, I watched it live. No, Manu, watched it live. We watched it live, although not together. We watched it live at the same time. And I was watching the highlights later on for the whole match day and turned it off because it was dull. And they were dull against Ajax. The last time I saw them play as well as I can remember was the away game at Benfica, where Sanchez played. Renato Sanchez played exceptionally well, and they looked pretty good as a team. But they've seemed a little bit off from that from then on. My problem I've got with them, Bryce, at the minute, and Manu, is that they're defending poorly, and they're leaking the sort of goals that you don't expect Bayern to do. I mean, we talked before we started recording, the goal they leak on the weekend is just a simple ball in from the right, and the attacker's left on his own middle of the 6-yard box to smash it home. Now, that normally doesn't happen against Bayern Munich. The defence centre-back partnerships are a lot better than that. They can spot the danger early. In fact, the cross doesn't even come in from the right or the left if they're on top of their game. So there are weaknesses that teams can exploit at the moment, and if Freiburg can find those weakness points, I think they can exploit them. The only problem they've got, though, is it's away for them. It's back in the Allianz Arena, where Bayern will feel a little bit more buoyed by this result, and I think someone is going to get hiding at some point from them when they click. Now, whether it's Freiburg this coming weekend is a different matter.
Mainz hasn't able to score a goal in 5 games going into this match. And then they score one against Bayern. I think that says a lot about, Mainz are not, we're not a good team going into this game. A team with a lot of problems, and they had chances to get a point there. Sandro Schwarz said after the match, we feel like we left something on the pitch, and you never want to hear a manager say that, right? So I think Bayern is leaking a lot of goals at the moment, and that's definitely something where they look vulnerable. And I wrote the preview for the cup match just before we went on this podcast, and there's a lot of injured players. Jerome Boateng is out, Hummels is out, Tolisso is still out, Coman is still out. The list, who we're missing, there's a long list of players. James Rodriguez, they're all going to miss the game midweek. So they're all not fit. Hummels had to be taken off the field last minute. He got hurt in the warm-up, and now he's out for this match. So that tells you quite a bit of the story, that they just seem to be not 100% there at the moment. And then the other thing that I really noticed is that Serge Gnabry was starting to look better and better. I really like what he's doing, but he's the only young player in the side right now because Coman is out injured, right? And then when Ribéry came on in the second half, this was the first game where I've noticed a sign of age with Franck Ribéry, because he used to be so good when he went one-on-one. This one-on-one situation when he tripled towards a defender and he could just get past him. And this time there was just no way through for him. He could not get past his man. And I think those are just little things that you start noticing, right? That one step is off. Boateng isn't quite as fast when he tracks back anymore. We noticed the same with Hummels. So everyone is just that one step slower, and the rest of the league has all gotten one step faster. And I'm just wondering, it might be still enough for them to win the title at the end of the year, but it's not going to be the same as easy as it was the last 6 years.
Well, Manuel, you talk about Robin and Ribéry maybe slowing down a little bit. We've talked about that for a while, haven't we? That those guys, you would imagine their best years are behind them, right? With the aging process and where they are in their career. Is Alphonso Davies, is he the man to possibly step into that role, or is he a bit too young, a bit too raw? This is the Vancouver Whitecaps player that's coming their way in the start of November, I believe.
Yeah, I watched the last Whitecaps game last night. I was in Vancouver. That season is over now for the Whitecaps. They didn't make the playoffs. For those who are confused, the MLS season runs from March to November, and then they have a month of playoffs. So Vancouver are not in the playoffs, so that means they are done for the season. He's now off to St. Kitts to play national team games with Canada. Then they're going to give him a week off, and then he's heading to Munich. And Kovac spoke today. I tweeted this out earlier. He said that he's going to head straight to Munich. He's going to train with the first team. And I quote, "We're not paying 10 million euros for a player to send him to the reserves." Now, I think that says quite a bit. They are very convinced that he can step in right away. Now, from what I've seen, I think he can too. I think he's a very good player. He scored 2 goals last night. That was goal number 7 and 8. And we have to remember this is a 17-year-old kid playing against grown man in a league that is getting better and better every year. MLS is not a retirement league anymore. It's a league where young players get more and more chances. A lot of the clubs have very good academies now. There's a lot of good South American talent that is playing in this league. It has developed quite a bit. So for a young player like him to get 8 goals in a year, playing as a winger most of the time and as a defensive back at time as well, is very good. And I think, and this is something, I had to think of this because we had Archie, of course, on last week, and he said something about Jadon Sancho that made a lot of sense to me. This approach, and we don't have a lot of German players doing this at the moment. This is why clubs are going elsewhere to find them. Jadon Sancho likes to run on the defense one-on-one, and he has no fear of challenging those players. And we get to talk about Sancho in a moment, because he's done some extraordinary things on the weekend as well. But Alphonso Davies does the same thing. Alphonso Davies is quite a tall kid. He's a very strong kid, but he's very, very fast with the ball, and he's able to turn on a dime. So what you see with him is these really quick, direct runs. So he will go, and the first goal he scored is a great example, against Portland Timbers on Sunday night. He got the ball in midfield and he just runs. And he's so quick with his feet that even if he runs straight at the defender cannot stop him, because he's just so quick making these little turns that he just gets around him. And we don't have a lot of players in German youth setups at the moment that can do this. And Alphonso Davies can do that. And Bayern have actually said that they didn't sign Jadon Sancho when they scouted him, because they were going after Davies instead. So I think this is really something that Bayern fans can look forward to. They're going to get a player who, like Ribéry in his younger years, will take on players offensively one-on-one and will beat them. And I think that is something that Bayern are lacking at the moment. And I think that's also something that they don't have in their squad right now, because Kingsley Coman is more of a player that will go out wide and then look in for a cross in, whereas Davies is more of a more direct player. So I think the two are rather compatible in the sense that they don't do the same thing, but, can add different elements to a team. And so I think if I was a Bayern fan, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, go on the MLS Twitter and look back on the first goal that he scored against Portland Timbers, because it's a very, very good goal from a player that still has a lot of development ahead of him. And this is a question that I was asked actually last night. Do I think he can step it up at Bayern? And I think he can. I mean, he's going to a Shark Tank, and he's going to a club where there's a lot of demands on him, but at the same time, it's also a club. And Chris, remember we talked about this last week. Bayern are not a club that will spend 40-50 million euros. They're a club that, for them, 18 million euros is a big investment. And that's how big this transfer could become over the next few years. So they're not going to say, okay, this is an experiment. They assigned him for the first team, and that's where he's going to be.
Yeah, it's going to be very exciting, especially if he can repeat anywhere near the level that Jadon Sancho is performing for rivals Dortmund. And actually, after the Freiburg game for Bayern Munich in the league, their next Bundesliga opponent will be Dortmund, which is going to be a very interesting tie, and one that we will, I'm sure, preview closer to the time. But Chris, you were at the Dortmund game over the weekend, the 2-2 draw against Hertha Berlin. This was coming off the back of a fantastic European result for them, 4-0 against Atletico Madrid. Atletico Madrid don't concede goals, and they conceded 4 against Dortmund. I mean, just incredible. But what exactly went wrong that after such a great performance that they would draw? I mean, we were just discussing before we came on the podcast, weren't we, that Dortmund used to do this. They used to kind of stumble after one great performance, and it was a bit of a lazy or a clumsy performance. Is this going back to old ways, or were Hertha that good?
Oh, maybe a little of both. I think it would be harsh to say they're going back to their old ways. They started to look tired round about 80 minutes, and I don't know how much that was because of the Wednesday game before, because it was such an intense game, such a high-profile game, and such a wonderful game. I don't know, maybe if it took a lot out of them mentally and physically, and maybe they just lost it in the last 10 minutes as such. Hertha were very good. They were maybe blown away at first, but once they settled into the fixture, they caused Dortmund all sorts of trouble. Klü was excellent. The back three weren't too bad, but it was the midfield five, and with Klü dropping deep, and his best pitch is always a pain in the backside for anyone who he plays against. It was a good, strong Hertha team performance. I think they never gave up. Obviously, equalised twice, 1-0 behind and then 2-1 behind. But really, Dortmund should have been way out of sight. And I think this may be down to the fact that they were looking a little bit leggy, maybe a little tired. Had an early goal chalked off correctly, I might add, for offside. Sancho did. So Marco Reus, I think it was, or it might have been Götze, was offside for the initial cross. So that was correctly done by VAR. but where in the past few weeks we've seen Dortmund go 2-1 up, and they then would go 3 and 4-1 up. Their play over the weekend was deserved of that. Just the finishing was pretty poor on the day, unfortunately. There was a fantastic opportunity for Brun Larsen, literally seconds before the penalty was given away. If that goes in, obviously the game's restarted from the centre circle, and that penalty never happens because that attack down the left-hand side doesn't come. So, it was. I think it was unlucky for them that they dropped points. But on the whole, Bryce, it was a fantastic game, and we'll have listeners all over the world that will watch Jadon Sancho. I've seen him a couple of times in the flesh, but Saturday was an absolute joy to watch. And Manuel, I'll be interested to hear your thoughts on that, because I spoke to Stefan Bushko, who we know very well in this podcast. I sat next to him in the press box, and I felt that it was a bit of a not poor substitution from Favre, but a strange one, because as soon as Sancho went off, Dortmund's tempo dropped, and it sort of invited Hertha to get back into the game.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I think we have to remember how old Sancho is, right? He's 18, and we forget that these kids don't often last the full 90 minutes yet. That's part of the development. So I think maybe he did it with that in mind, to kind of protect him a little bit. But you're quite right. I think if you take Jadon Sancho off the form that he is on right now, you do sacrifice speed. I think though that the error was defensively more than anything, right, Chris? That Sakadu taking down Selke at the very last minute. Again, Sakadu is a very young player, so I don't want to throw him under the bus here. Just saying that I think that the real learning process there was for Dortmund that they have to just shut down games. And when I wrote the preview for this, I was almost tempted to put this down as a draw, because I remember so many occasions last year where they would, or not last year, but the year before under Tuchel, where they were fantastic in Europe and then would just drop points unnecessarily in the league. Now, Hertha are a good side. Don't want to downplay them at all, because they did beat Bayern. Let's remember that. I mean, they did take 3 points of Bayern, not just 2, but all 3. But I think really everyone talked about the character test thing, right? Before the Atletico match, and we all raved and oohed and awed that at this Atletico result is so amazing, and they beat them 4-0. And then they dropped 2 points against Hertha. And I actually almost thought, okay, like this is now actually the character test. What are they going to be able to conserve this performance against Atletico and do the same thing in the league against Hertha? And I think they did in some ways, but in other ways they just, where they were able to shut down Atletico for those crucial 15 minutes in the second half, where Atletico could have scored 1 or 2. They did not manage quite the same thing with Hertha. And I think maybe, that's actually, I'm going to throw this back to you, Chris, because I think that's where the real learning process is going to be next. To learn that you have to take Hertha just as serious as Atletico, for example.
Oh, yeah, most definitely. And that's part of the match report that I put in, that if Dortmund have got any real aspirations of winning the league or pushing Bayern the whole way, then they need to be able to take their chances. And I don't know if they were maybe lackadaisical would be the wrong word, but they certainly seemed fully focused. I mean, from the minute the whistle went, they were on the attack. I mean, Sancho's goal was disallowed after 2-3 minutes. Mm-hmm. They were intending to attack from the off. I just think that on any other day, they score 3 or 4 there, or maybe even 5. And on the flip side of that, on any other day, I think Hertha get 3 or 4. I wouldn't have been surprised if this game was 4-4 at one point. The chances both sides had were just as much. And Sakadu was, not that his penalty, giving away the penalty was anything bad. He made a mistake, but he was on for man of the match for me at one point, because he's an absolute rock at the back. I don't know if you've not seen him face to face, I think you don't realise how big he is. on television. And not just tall, I mean wide as well. He is an absolute unit.
There's a great picture of him and Diego Costa at the Atletico match.
I'll have to look out.
Oh, he's just towering over him. But that gives you a good idea of how big of a player he is. Is that the one
where he's squaring up to him?
Yeah.
Oh, right, okay, because I didn't even see Costa in that. That's how big Zagadou is. He had a phenomenal game. His reading of the game was excellent. His positional play was fantastic. He broke up the attack on occasions. The problem is Selke just got the wrong side of him, and because he is young, he panicked and he made a youthful challenge, the sort of challenge you would expect, a youth player to make when they're panicked, and unfortunately that's allowed Hertha back in. Unfortunately for Dortmund, but I think Hertha's play maybe was rewarded in the end with a draw. But you could tell around the whole stadium that it felt like 2 points dropped in the end because Dortmund should have been way out of sight. But yeah, don't take it away from Hertha. I thought they were very disciplined. Paul Dardai had them drilled down the middle. They made Dortmund go wide all the time, which when you've got someone like Sancho is rather easy to do. But yeah, it was a fantastic game to watch. And I think in the end it was probably a fair result. Although Dortmund did enough to win, I think the way Hertha approached it and the way they went around their own game plan meant that for them to take a point away was a fair result. The headline I had was was Hertha snatch a point at the end, and that's what they did. They did snatch it, but their play deserved it.
I think this result has been coming for Dortmund because there was a few games where, with all the attacking brilliance that they have, remember the 4-3 against Leverkusen, against Augsburg, the 4-2 against Leverkusen. I mean, there've been a few times where they were able to snatch a late win or come back. And these are all fantastic results. There was 50 minutes against Atletico where they were fighting for their dear lives, only 1-0 up, and then completely overwhelmed them. And I felt like that this result was coming. And I remember when I was in Dortmund about 2 weeks ago, Favre repeatedly said, give us time. This looks all great on paper right now. All the results are fantastic, but we're not a finished product by any means. And I think anyone closely involved with the club and working with the club, they all knew that this result was coming. And I think as disappointing of a result it is, it's when you really look at the span of results that they had over the last few weeks, and as fantastically as they have been playing, and they played fantastic against Hertha, there's a lot of very young players in the side. So individually, they were bound to make a mistake that will cost Dortmund points. But I rather have them lose drop points the way that they're doing it now, bringing in all these young players that will only get better than, let's say, a team like Bayern that's digressing because they're not having brought and haven't made that generation switch yet. But yeah, I think this result has been sort of coming when you really look back at the results.
Chris, just talk. We're going to talk a little bit about, I suppose, Mario Götze. It seemed like he had a bit of a new role in this Dortmund side. Sancho has been on fantastic form, but I just want to ask the question. I mean, I've kind of been looking at the Dortmund squad, and you'll be able to maybe sum it up a little bit for me, or shed a little light on it. I mean, I'm looking at the attacking options this side has, and you've got Pulisic, Sancho, you've got Maximilian Philipp, you've got Alcázar, you've got Rouse, you've got Götze. I mean, they've got an awful lot of attacking players. You've got Dahoud, and that. I mean, can you possibly play all of these players at once? I mean, they've got fantastic talent, but who loses out? I mean, can you play Sancho and Pulisic, for example? I mean, they're big questions, great, questions, for Favre to have, but, is somebody going to get a little bit upset here?
Well, if they do, that's their own problem. Football's a squad game these days. I think Lucien Favre and everybody at Dortmund is exceptionally happy at the squad they've got at the moment on paper. And they certainly got one of the strongest squads in the league, if not the strongest squad on maybe on age at the moment. And the fact that Manu, has already said that Bayern are digressing a little bit. Players want to play week in, week out, but I think the difference with Dortmund is they've all bought into the project that Lucien Favre wants to have there, and the upper tier management of building a youthful squad. And yes, you're not going to play every single game week in, week out, but you know what, you're going to be there, or you're going to be thereabouts. You're going to be in for one game, on the bench for the next, and it's winning as a team, losing as a team, and drawing as a team. I think you only get problems when you've got superstars in teams who. And I think Bayern have seen that this season. They've got some elder statesmen there who still want to be playing, but maybe haven't accepted that they can't play every game and don't like it. And I don't think we're seeing that at Dortmund. Sancho's quite happy to start on the bench because he knows the next game he's going to be starting in the 11. So I think there's an understanding at Dortmund that all these players can't play at once, but the 11 that start on the pitch start as the manager's or the coach's choice for that particular game. And it's not like the days of Klopp where they're only making one substitution on 80 minutes. This is, they're making 3 substitutions per game at the moment. Okay, the last one for Toprak was more to try and find a winner if they could, because of his height advantage. But, the substitutions are there, and they're the correct ones that are being made. So, no, I don't think there is a problem, and I don't think there will be a problem. If you want to win titles these days, be them domestically or in Europe, you've got to have a deep squad, and Dortmund do have that at the moment. And Mario Götze has been shifted into the centre. I think we all know his injury problems that he's had over the past year. Although he's a number 10, if you're going to play a centre forward role, I know they play a 4-3-3, but we'll say he's a 9 anyway. If he's going to play that 9 role, he doesn't have to be as mobile. He's quite happily within the tactics of being in the centre forward position. He doesn't have to run as much. Not when he's got on this weekend, he had Guerrero on one side of him and Sancho on the other. They can do the running for him. He just needs to be in the right place at the right time to either assist or score. And he was for that. He set up the goal. I think he set up the goal. That was Royce that set up the goal that was disallowed. But the first goal is down to Mario Götze's good vision to pick out Sancho when maybe a couple of seasons ago he might have tried a shot and it would have been saved. He's now got he's always had the ability, but he's got the awareness to know what his body can and can't do. And I think playing him in that central role where he doesn't have to run enough, I think is excellent management by Favre.
I actually think, I just want to add something to this because I think you bang on, Chris. And I think it's really interesting because in Paco Alcázar, they actually signed a striker that is almost identical in build to Götze. And I think that already shows you that Favre sees the number 9 position very different than most people do. There's been lots of talk about, Dortmund couldn't afford to sign Michy Batshuayi. No, they didn't want to sign Michy Batshuayi because he was not a striker that they needed. They needed a player like Paco Alcázar who could drop deep and allow players like Sancho or Royce or Philipp or Wolf or name all the other attacking young players that they have to run into that gap that is created. And yes, Paco Alcázar has scored a lot of goals, but they didn't sign him just for that. Götze does this very similar. He doesn't have that automatic goal scoring instinct that Paco Alcázar has. But what he does when he plays as a number 9, he automatically drops a little bit deep, which means and allows him to hold the ball. And there was a goal that the last goal that Dortmund scored, the one that Hakimi scored, Hakimi put on to Sancho, was actually Götze won the ball at the halfway line, dropped deep, and then played the ball forward in the space that was created because he was dropping deep. And that's what Favre wants from his strikers. Remember, Raphael and Stindl were both made into strikers by Favre at Gladbach. So I think that is something that people have to understand, that actually Götze, who doesn't like to play as a number 9, by the way, is actually a perfect number 9 in the Favre system.
Yeah, well, definitely got plenty of options as we've mentioned up top, and Chris made a good point. You need plenty of options if you want to win titles, right? So. But Chris, we'll not dwell on it too long, but I feel that we're going to have to touch on it a little bit, and that's the off-field antics, the Hertha fans clashing with the police while you were there. What exactly happened here, and what was the cause? Was it just a bad bunch of travelling fans. I mean, we see this every so often in the Bundesliga, not too often, thankfully, but it does pop up every so often.
Yeah, it does, and I think we have to look at where the criticism's been fired at from quite a lot of angles, and unfortunately, it's been at the police for this one. Not excusing the behaviour of the fans, but yes, everybody knows it's illegal to take pyrotechnics into football grounds in Germany. No, it doesn't stop anybody. The normal policy is to review footage, give it to the club. The club will then identify who's involved, and then bans will be issued, be that for those ultra groups. However, on Saturday, the NRW police weren't particularly happy with the pyro, so they went in and they tried to steal a banner from the ultras, which was celebrating their 15-year anniversary. Now, when ultras get their banners stolen, it's a thing that I know people are going to go, "What? This is a football match," but we have to remember in the context that there's ultras, and when ultras get their banners stolen, that is a massive thing. Be it by opposition sides or supporters who then turn them upside down as a trophy, or whether the police confiscate them. And there are times when banners have been lost and those ultra movements have stopped. Now, the pyro display that Hertha put on was fantastic. Okay, it's illegal, but it was still fantastic, and it happens. Frankfurt did something similar in the week for their Europa League game, and they'll be heavily fined by UEFA, and Hertha will be heavily fined by the DFL for pyrotechnics. But it was over police. There was no need for the police to go in there and try and stop them, because the pyro would burn itself out, which is what it did. But they went in and they escalated it. Unfortunately, escalated it to such a degree where the Hertha fans felt, or the Hertha ultras felt, they could respond with flagpoles and batons, and it was all unsightly and got out of hand. And then it all happened again at half time. I think the main losers for this whole thing were the toilets in the away block, which were absolutely smashed off the walls and then thrown at the police. So there was problems from all sides on this. I think the escalation from the police, who've got a very difficult job to do, and I'm not criticising them, but I think whoever decided to go in and remove the banner because they were hiding behind it when they were lighting pyros was probably the wrong call. Do what they normally do, which is let the pyro burn out, report the club, and get the individuals banned by video technology, and it wouldn't have escalated in the way it did.
Yeah, that's it. I think stealing banners from ultras, well, I think you're kind of asking for trouble there. There's got to be a better way to approach that. But as you said, we'll not tell them what to do. They do a great enough job anyway. Guys, let's talk about the late kickoff game on Saturday. I tuned in for this one. Manu, you also did. Hoffenheim, dismantled Stuttgart, didn't they? It was a little bit of a slow approach, especially as Stuttgart were a man down, but getting the job done with 4 goals in 12 minutes in the second half, and then they kind of played it out. So it's a good result for Hoffenheim, and they're getting things back on track, aren't they?
Yeah, for Hoffenheim, this is a great result. I think that you can just see that the many injured players. You have to remember they had the creative midfield in particular was completely in hospital for pretty much all of the start of the season and the first 3 games in the Champions League as well, and they're all coming back, and yeah, it's showing. I mean, there's a ton of quality in this Hoffenheim side, and I think that they're gonna just rock up the table. So great result for Hoffenheim, but for Stuttgart, oh boy, they spent a lot of money in the off season, and they've now fired the coach. And the results have been even worse than they were before, under Korkut and under Weinziel. They just has been atrocious. So I think they have to take a very long, hard look in the mirror. I think the one saving grace for Stuttgart is that they're in the kicker standings. They're actually ranked 17th together with Düsseldorf, and that's because in Germany, if 2 teams are on the same spot, they basically rank them 1 position higher, put them both on the same position as in 17th. But yeah, they're at bottom of the league at the moment.
This is John Grills from the Creepy Podcast. With Best Christmas Ever on AMC Plus, every day feels like Christmas morning. From new holiday favorites like Elf and National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation to modern iconic family classics like The Polar Express and The Year Without a Santa Claus, you can spend the holiday season opening only the good stuff. Plus, you get a stocking stuffed with highly acclaimed AMC series like The Walking Dead and Mad Men, new series like Gangs of London and The Walking Dead World Beyond. And you're also getting your favorite iconic Christmas movies without having to search. AMC Plus is available on all your devices. Sign up today at amcplus.com. AMC Plus, only the good stuff.
Let's be real. Dealing with tangled cords can make it harder to do your hair. Break free with the new Unbound Cordless Auto Curler from Conair. Get the curls and waves you want, anytime, anywhere. It's designed to let you experience the power and freedom of beauty in motion. No cords to hold you back. You get your curls and waves your way. Unplug and be unbound. Loose curls, tight curls, beachy waves. The Unbound Cordless Auto Curler makes it easy to get the looks you love. Love your look. Live unbound. Available at Conair.com and search Unbound.
Yeah, it doesn't look good for them at all. But Hoffenheim, as I said when we were talking on Saturday evening, that was actually their first clean sheet of the season. They were the last team in the Bundesliga to achieve that feat. But Hoffenheim versus Leipzig midweek, Chris, in the Pokal. Bit of a spicy Bundesliga early Pokal stage affair.
Yes, and I'm pretty sure that both these sides wouldn't have fancied playing each other because I think the Pokal offers a real decent opportunity for both of them to get some silverware, and obviously that's not going to happen for one of them when they meet each other. But I'm sure Hoffenheim will be very happy that for once they didn't leak a goal. I did the thoughts after their game against against Lyon, and that was one of the main points. To note, leaky Hoffenheim I think they leaked 12 goals in their opening few matches this season, and that had to stop at some point. And it has at Stuttgart, who, as Manu said, get whipped again 4-0. Is this going to be their default result now, week in, week out?
Yeah, it's really not looking good for Stuttgart at all, is it? I suppose it might be one of those seasons that they're going to perform badly, but they just need a few other teams to perform even worse. But I'm sure they'll be hoping that is not the case. Let's talk about the Sunday games, especially that game of 8 goals. Plenty to talk about there. Manu, your curse may have been lifted as they managed to score 6. I mean, to be fair, Werder Bremen put up a bit of a fight early doors, but then Leverkusen ran away with it. We've seen Pizarro become the second oldest player to ever score a Bundesliga goal, as the 40-year-old managed to score Werder Bremen's second. Is this Leverkusen possibly turning things around? I mean, has Hertha saved his job by such an odd result?
He saved it until next week. They have a cup game against Gladbach, and it's a Rhine derby. It's a very, very big match. And I think the expectations are very much that Leverkusen will go very deep in that competition. It's from where they are right now, only 3 clubs have actually managed to still reach the Champions League. And one of them was actually them. Hertha did it twice, in 2001, 2002, and 2004, 2005. And actually Leverkusen managed it in 97, 98. They had a similar start then and then still managed to finish 3rd overall. I'm not sure they're quite over the hill yet. I think in this game in particular, Kofeld may have, done some coaching errors in the way he set this team up. Moisander, and I read a crazy statistic about Moisander, the defender at Werder Bremen. With him, Werder have collected 1.54 points a game, and without him only 0.5. So quite a key player. And with him gone, they decided to go from 4 in the back to 3 in the back to sort of compensate that. So not only did he not replace Moisander with just another defender, but he switched the system. And the way I saw this, that was maybe too much for a still, a Werder side that is coming very much in its own, but it's just become comfortable with the way they are playing in this, the 4-4-2 with Diamond and midfield Diamond. And this just didn't work for them. Leverkusen just had too easy of a time to cut them open, to break them apart. And then you have fast attacking players. Bellarabi was excellent again. I highlighted him in the Europa League after the Europa League match. He's actually said this is a player to watch. He was fantastic in the Europa League. He was fantastic in this game. Brandt was excellent. Havertz was excellent. These are all players that are very, very fast. And I think with the three in the back, Werder were just not able to defend that speed. And I think that's just maybe going to be quite a big lesson for Kofeld, that system change just doesn't work for Werder.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, I suppose, Chris, if we look at it, Werder, I've had a very bright start to the season. And, this is more of a result that, well, maybe not 6-2, but more, a victory we would have expected, at the start of the season before it was all kicked off. I mean, at the same time, I suppose we wouldn't have predicted that Leverkusen would be sitting in 12th at this stage. But I would imagine that Werder Bremen will be able to continue on with their great season. After this, this is not going to be them on the downward trajectory.
Well, I hope not, because they've been playing some excellent football. I mean, when Osaka scored that second goal, I really thought they were going to get back into it and, maybe go on. But for the reasons that Manu's already highlighted, they were pretty much killed with speed in 10 minutes, weren't they? And from a game that looked like they were about to scrape a draw from, or maybe even go on and win, and they were quickly dismantled with an extra 3 goals, which left them 6-2 behind. So, maybe a little harsh in the end, because I think as Leverkusen went forward, everything they touched turned to goals. So it was a fantastic day for them. But yeah, Manu's already highlighted the fact that I think Kofeld went with the wrong system due to absence of players, and hopefully that'll be a learning curve for them, because even though they've been beaten there and they've been comprehensively beaten, they're still in fourth. And we could even say joint third on goal difference, couldn't we? But they've got a little gap between them, albeit 1 point to fifth and sixth. So, it'll be a lesson for them there. And if you look at the table as it is at the moment, the biggest winners, I think throughout the whole weekend, were Bayern, because of what happened around them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a very good point. Going into the next Bundesliga match day, you're going to have Werder Bremen taking on Mainz. They're going to be hoping to get back to winning ways there. But Manu, there's a few things we want to discuss before the end of the podcast here, and it's there's a new television deal for the Bundesliga. This is good news, is it not? Going ahead, and how exactly?
Bryce, it's not a new television deal. It's there's the negotiation cycle for a new deal is starting.
Ah, my bad then. Well, I was going to say, how exactly is this money going to be distributed then? Is that going to be any different, or?
Well, it depends how much they're going to get, right? It's they're hoping for 5.64 billion euros, which is as much. So that's going to be the starting the sum that they're going into negotiations with, because that's how much they're going to get in the last year of the current contract. So the distribution, we don't know what it is. We've spoken last week that it needs to be fairer. In other words, Bayern need to get less. Good luck with that. I think we all know what's going to happen if Bayern don't get their way. Press conferences, etc.
No, I don't say anything.
No.
Well, they've got their own dedicated channel there with fair and honest representation that they can broadcast their matches on.
Yeah, absolutely. Without commentating, so that there will be no criticism whatsoever. Jokes aside, I think the one thing that we already know is, and I think all of us on this show are going to breathe a sigh of relief. The Monday games are going to be gone for the Bundesliga, and they might, and this is still something that the Bundesliga 2 teams are figuring out, they might be gone for the Bundesliga 2 teams as well. And I think if the fans, and this is because of fan pressure, that would be a huge win for the fans, because this Monday night game is horrible. It's one of the worst things you can do for traveling supporters. I mean, Chris, just Munich to 1860 had a game in Rostock this year. In Liga 3, they have the Monday games too. That's 1,000 kilometers on a Monday night. That's just not possible.
No, it's not. And I know we for anyone that's over in England, we have them in England, but obviously England's a reduced size anyway. If you think of the size of the United Kingdom, well, all of a sudden you cut a big chunk of that off because you're getting rid of Wales, albeit Cardiff and Swansea, and you're certainly getting rid of Scotland. So maybe it's a little easier, but it's certainly not welcomed. And I think the move away from Monday night games will be looked on enviously by supporters in England and maybe some other nations as well, because you're quite right. If, let's say, for instance, you're Hertha Berlin and you're away to Freiburg on a Monday night, there's no way fans can get down there, because you're looking at maybe a fourth, maybe 5 to 5.5 hours, could even be 6 with traffic. Now we're looking at an 8 o'clock kickoff. Well, I don't think people are going to be able to finish work at 2 o'clock, and then you've got to get back the next day as well. And we all know, going and watching German football, there's a whole culture there where you're eating and drinking and meeting up with friends, and you can't really do that on a Monday night. It's the working people's game. I know there's a section of people that don't like that phrase, but it is a working people's game, and it's certainly in Germany. They're very community-driven clubs, and if you look at what has been said in the past, especially for the Ruhr region clubs, the supporters are out during the working week in hard working conditions in factories and chemical units and hard manual labour, and their outlet is football on a weekend, Saturday and Sunday. I think, Manu, you'll know there was enough problems with the Friday night game, and that came back in originally. And I think stretching the match day over to Monday, especially with the size of the country, is not good. And when you're pushing it down to Liga Dry as well, you're asking small clubs to make large journeys on a Monday, which won't fit them either. So the removal of the Monday night fixture, I think, will fine. And I don't personally think it's a benefit to the teams that play on a Thursday anyway. I don't think there's any difference between 1 o'clock Sunday and 8 o'clock Monday, because we saw last season, didn't we, that Leipzig played on a Monday because they played the previous Thursday, and that didn't help them because, funnily enough, they're playing the next Thursday, like 72 hours later. So I think sticking to the weekend games makes it easier for everybody, but especially for the fans who are the lifeblood of the game, because, I think I sound like a broken record, but football without fans is nothing.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point, isn't it, Chris? I suppose one final topic we'll just cover very, very quickly. Manu, obviously the German national side haven't been doing great in international competition, but the Bundesliga has been doing very well, hasn't it? Explain a little bit about this.
Yeah, so we had a horrible year in the UEFA coefficient ratings, and everyone was talking about how the Bundesliga is on a downward spiral. I think Chris and I, we were shouting a little bit against the wind for most of last year, saying it's due to the clubs that we sent to the UEFA, different UEFA competitions. Because guess what? This year we sent some of our best teams, and the Bundesliga are first. They collected 7,357 points, which is more than Spain, England, or Italy. They're at the very top of the UEFA coefficient rankings. And I mean, we look at the results. Even Hoffenheim, as a new first-year Champions League team, yeah, they haven't won a game, but they didn't look out of it in any of the games. Against City, for example, they could have easily gotten that point. When you look at the standings, I think all the clubs at the moment look like they're going to be still in the competitions past the winter. And that's a huge success. And that's a huge step up from last year. I mean, the Europa League results, in particular, yes, Leverkusen and Leipzig both stumbled once, but I reckon they will both get through their groups. And you look at what Frankfurt have done. I'm really fantastic. I think that was one of the big criticisms, that teams in the Europa League didn't take the Europa League serious enough. That has certainly changed.
Absolutely. It's only a good thing for the Bundesliga, that news. But that more or less does it for this week. Chris, what have you got going on in the next few days leading up to the next match day? I know that there's Pokal games. Where can people find you on the likes of Twitter?
On the socials, you can find me at Twitter on @Chris78Williams. And what I've got coming up is some Pokal watching, and then back to Bundesliga action. And then I think we back into Europa League action. Leipzig are up at Celtic, which is certainly on my list of things to apply for tomorrow, as well as a couple of other games. So yes, that's my current week for the moment, Bryce.
Exciting. Good luck with applying to that one. That would be something else, wouldn't it? Manu, I would imagine there's plenty going on in the Football Grad Network. What would you like to draw people's attention to?
We have a couple of the cup previews up, and Bundesliga is coming back. Do some feature writing. There's a couple article ideas floating around that I've been finding, because last week was insane with the Champions League and Europa League. There's you don't really have very much time for feature writing. So I have a long list of feature article ideas that I haven't had the time to get to. So I think I'm going to tackle them, and there's going to be a few good ones in there. So, you can find all of those at Football Grad Live.
Very exciting. Yes, as always, head over to @FootballGradLive on Twitter. If you haven't got enough football in your life, there's going to be match reports and articles and all sorts on there to fill your boots. Thank you for tuning in. As always, we appreciate you taking the time out. If you'd like to get in touch with us on Twitter or by any other means, just give us a shout. We enjoy hearing from you all. I'm your host, Bryce Dunn. You can find me on Twitter @BryceDunn11. And that more or less does it for this week. I hope you enjoy the Pokal games. And before you know it, we'll be back into another exciting match day. Until then, auf Wiedersehen.
Ich warte seit Wochen auf diesen Tag und tanz vor Freude über den Asphalt, als wär's ein Rhythmus, als gäb's ein Lied, das mich immer weiter durch die Straßen zieht. Komm dir entgegen, ich hab zu holen.
Want natural, healthy-looking shine and voluminous curls and waves that make you look like you just stepped out of a salon? It's easy with Conair Jumbo and Super Jumbo Hot Rollers. These 12 ceramic flocked rollers heat up in just 85 seconds. And because they're infused with ceramic, they transfer heat evenly for big, bouncy, long-lasting curls. Twice the flocking of competitive products means more heat protection. Wire clips ensure a secure hold. Makes a great gift for yourself or someone special. Go to Conair.com for Jumbo and Super Jumbo Hot Rollers now.
Thank you for listening to Believe. You can show support to your host by subscribing to the show and giving us a 5-star rating on your preferred platform. Check us out at Believe.com and search for BLEAV on YouTube.